Good afternoon, everyone. This is Johan Rempel from Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. Thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon. Really appreciate it. I know you're all very busy, so we are very grateful for you making time for this. Today's presentation, this is going to be one of a series of 10 presentations that CIDI will be providing. And this one is an overview of disability culture. I have the opportunity to co-present today with Liz Persad and Tori Hughes. Next slide, please. And we try to practice what we preach regarding accessibility. We have a captionist, our captionist Idilla, who is providing live captions for these sessions. And there's two ways that you can access the live captions. One of them is the closed captions button on the bottom of the toolbar within Zoom. And the other method is the link, the stream text link that Idilla has placed in the chat. So either one of those will work. The stream text link provides some additional options that the built-in closed captions do not. Next slide. And then very briefly, one of the reasons why we are using the Zoom platform is because of its accessibility. And just a couple of things to point out here, spotlighting and pinning. Only the host or co-host can spotlight someone. Whoever is spotlighted will appear in speaker view. So in the future, if you have an individual who may be providing American Sign Language, ASL, the host could certainly spotlight them so that everyone could see that if they chose. And then pinning is really a customizable feature on the end user. Any participant can pin any other participant's video at any time and only impacts that participant's display. And it's fairly easy to do that. You hover over the participant you want to spotlight or pin, and then choose the ellipsis, the ... and then choose either spotlight for everyone or pin. Next slide. So session description, this training will focus on being able to better understand present-day disability awareness obstacles, along with the resources that are in place to overcome these barriers. And presenters will share information on disability culture and define the differences between the medical model of disability and the social model of disability, including specific examples. Next slide. And I'll go ahead and let Liz introduce herself.
Thank you, Johan. Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be with you this afternoon. Happy Friday. My name is Liz Persad. I currently serve as the Program and Outreach Manager for Tools for Life, which is the Assistive Technology Act program here in the state of Georgia. We are at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. And there is my email address if anyone would like to get in touch with me at any time. Thank you to Johan for the invitation to join all of you today.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tori Hughes, and I'm the Outreach Specialist for Tools for Life. I work very closely with Liz Persad on our programming and outreach for our program, as well as with Johan within the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. And as Liz mentioned, our emails are below.
Excellent. Thank you both. And I've already introduced myself, Johan Rempel. I oversee a lot of our digital accessibility and UX initiatives at CIDI. And I work closely with Liz and Tori on a number of projects that we've done in the past, and always look forward to collaborating with them and learning from them. Next slide. So the learning objectives today are: at the end of this session, participants will be able to identify the difference between the medical and social models of disability. Participants will be able to define 3 attitudinal barriers faced by people living with disabilities. And participants will be able to identify the 5 challenges of moving beyond tolerance as well as the 8 stages of response towards acceptance. Next slide. So a brief overview of Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. We have about approximately 65 employees on staff at CIDI. So as part of Georgia Tech, we are a research-based institute, and a lot of the work we do is research-based. We have several research scientists on staff, and a lot of the contracts and grants we pursue also move from research to practice and services. So some of those services include digital accessibility and UX. That might include web accessibility evaluations, technical assistance, training. We're all about transferring knowledge. We really want to empower individuals and organizations as much as possible to have that expertise in-house and to start building that for more of a sustainable model. We have some extensive Braille services as well, and that includes large contracts with, for example, National Library Services, and then customized services as well. Captioning and described audio services, that includes the live captions that you're experiencing here today. And then our team also works on audio description for individuals who are low vision or blind who need additional information with video content. We have an entire eText department that provides remediation for electronic documents that may not be accessible either as they're designed or as they're rolled out and shared with others. And then Tori and Liz are going to talk a little bit about the assistive technology team, which largely consists of the Tools for Life team. And we are celebrating their 30 years as of 2021 in the state of Georgia. So with that, I believe Tori is next. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you
Great.
so much, Johan. So as Johan said, we're going to talk a little bit about Tools for Life. So we are the Assistive Technology Act program for the state of Georgia. There's a program like us in every state and U.S. territory. We're all named something a little bit different, but we all serve the same purpose. So up on the screen right now is our mission statement, which says that Tools for Life increases access to and acquisition of assistive technology devices and services so Georgians of all ages can live, learn, work, and play in the communities of their choice. We have served people as young as, I think, 6 months old, all the way up past 100 in all areas of life. If we're looking at a student maybe who is having difficulty in school because of learning disabilities, we can find solutions for that. Or if it's someone who's older and wants to stay in their home longer instead of being in a nursing home, we can find solutions to help them be independent and remain within their home. Those are just a couple of different examples. Of course, it all comes down to what is assistive technology. We are, like I said, the Assistive Technology Act program for the state. And assistive technology is any item or piece of equipment that can be used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of individuals. So, and again, this is in all aspects of life, including school, at work, at home, and in the community. For example, the picture that we have on this slide is of a high contrast keyboard. So the keyboard itself is black, but the keys are yellow with black writing. And you may be able to notice that the lettering size is a lot bigger than on a standard keyboard. So that's just one example of a piece of assistive technology that could help someone who maybe has low vision and needs a specific kind of color contrast. Along with assistive technology devices, we at Tools for Life like to meet with individuals one-on-one. We like to have observations, and we call it hanging out with intent. So it's all about seeing what's going to be the best strategy or tool or service that's going to match the person's needs, their abilities, and the tasks they wish to complete. We look at a wide range of options. We start from the low or no tech end. So things like a highlighter or reading out loud can actually be something that's considered assistive technology. A dry erase board, colored transparencies, different kinds of pencil grips, or even a slant board sometimes can be considered assistive technology. Again, these are very basic, very, very low or no tech. One of my favorite things is using a tennis ball as a pencil grip. You can find them all over the place, just discarded at tennis courts. And you just drill a hole straight through. And now you've got something to put a pencil through, or a paintbrush, or even a toothbrush, or a fork, anything that gives the person the ability to grip something that has maybe a smaller barrel. And then we can move into mid-tech, which are things like your speech to text or text to speech, a lot of different spell checkers or digital organizers. We also look at adaptive keyboards and mice and different kinds of toys. CCTV, which was like a big video magnifier for computers, is considered mid-tech. And then any apps on tablets or phones or computers that are under $100. All of these things are considered mid-tech. And then from there, we can look at our high-tech solutions. So that is the devices themselves of a tablet or a smartphone, smart pens, or even OCR software, which is ocular character recognition. We can also look at environmental controls like the Amazon Echo or the Google Home. And then we're also looking at things as far as apps that are over $100, which are things that are very robust when it comes to maybe communication and things along those lines.
Hey, Tori,
yeah.
I saw a question in the chat here. What is a slant board? And Alicia had asked that.
Sure, a slant board is actually really basic. So if you think about having a little bit of an elevated surface, that's really what a slant board is. I've used them before when I'm like lying in bed and reading a book sometimes. So instead of it just being a flat surface, one end is raised a little bit higher than the other. And again, it's slanted more towards the person. The back end, if you will, is slanted up. That way, someone's not having to maybe crane their neck to look down at a flat surface. They can remain upright, and the slant board can be raised or lowered depending on the comfort for that person. And now I'm going to toss this over to Liz.
Thank you, Tori. Great job. So when we are looking at assistive technology and really and truly at just disability culture in general, it's important to take a step back and look at who we're serving. And so when you think about it, there are over 60 million individuals in the US that have disabilities that affect their ability to see, hear, communicate, reason, walk, or perform other basic life functions. The truth is that this number is growing every single day. If you think about individuals that are in the aging population, Tori mentioned earlier the range of folks that we serve in the Assistive Technology Act network throughout the country. It really is all ages, all disabilities. And so it's a range of folks that we have to pay attention to. So we absolutely can be serving individuals who are older adults. Oftentimes we have folks that are serving our country and coming back with injuries that are wanting to get back in the community, whether it's working, doing volunteer work, what have you. And so we absolutely see the range of folks within that population. And it's important to pay attention to that. Next slide, please. And so again, when we are looking around our community and we are paying attention to folks with disabilities, it's important to know that that equals 1 in 4. 1 in every 4 individuals identifies as having a disability, and that equates to 26%. So if you're sitting in a room right now with a bunch of people, the next time you are, I encourage you to look around. People with disabilities are everywhere. Often in the disability community, there's an acronym that is shared called TAB. And what that stands for is temporarily able-bodied. And the truth is that we know that anyone at any point in their life will be diagnosed or have some type of disabling feature in their life. And so again, it is important to really pay attention to our community and to treat people with that respect, if you will. People with disabilities are the largest minority group in America. This group cuts across racial, ethnic, religious, gender, and age boundaries. And once again, anyone can become a member of this minority group at any time. So again, to me, this always makes me think of that golden rule of treat people the way that you want to be treated, because you never know what your situation can be at any given point in time in your life, but you never know who you could be communicating with or just interacting with as well. Next slide, please. And so with all that being said, the importance of disability awareness is something that should be at the top of everyone's list, because we do want to be living in communities where we are holistic in our approach, where we are looking at people as just people and not categories of we versus they, or strong versus weak, or adequate versus inadequate. Again, there are more than 1 billion people with disabilities in the world who must overcome challenges every day, and that includes the challenge of stigmatization. As a society, we have to recognize that we're all different, and we have to recognize the importance of acceptance. Disability awareness is important when it comes to breaking down those stereotypes and overcoming preconceptions regarding disabilities. And I just want to emphasize that, because as somebody who identifies as an individual with a disability, that is the #1 barrier out there for me in my life. It's overcoming the miseducation, the misinformation, the preconceptions, and the myths and the stereotypes. So when it comes to the importance of disability awareness, learning about disabilities, learning about the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and taking part in awareness activities just like this one, it's so important that y'all are here today listening to us, asking questions, and engaging in this thoughtful conversation about disability culture. These are important steps towards breaking down these barriers and absolutely promoting change. Next slide, please. So we often say curb cuts when we talk about innovations in the world of the disability community, if you will. The reason why we say curb cuts is because back in, I would say, gosh, the 50s, 60s, I'll give an example just here in Atlanta, where we are. So in the AJC, there was an article that came out. They were doing some development in the city, and they were putting in curb cuts. So those of you that aren't familiar with the term curb cut, what that means is when you're out in the community on the sidewalks, it's like a little ramp, right, that you get up on the sidewalk. Everybody uses them. There are often tactile bumps on there as well, just to be able to allow people to feel some sort of texture, if you will. But those are what are called curb cuts. And so this article in the AJC came out saying that people would not know what to do when they came upon a curb cut. Could you imagine moving up, walking, rolling, strolling, however you move up to a curb cut and being like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do. Do I jump over it? Do I step on the side? Do I not move forward at all? To me, that was just the most silliest thing in the world. Curb cuts are there for everyone. Yes, it's there for me in my wheelchair, but it's there for people who have rolling suitcases, who have rolling briefcases in the city of Atlanta, anywhere. It's for people who are pushing strollers and different carts. It's for everyone. It's universal design. So that is the funny and interesting story about curb cuts and the history of curb cuts, but also the importance of it. And so often we will say, when we're talking about AT and the fight for it and just the history of it and the innovation, we talk about innovations as electronic curb cuts. And so often in our field of assistive technology, we often find that many pieces of technology, devices, software are often being built with people with disabilities in mind, which is really cool. But that technology is more oftentimes than not created for mainstream individuals. So there's so much technology and aspects of technology that you all use, features on your phone, apps, you name it, again, that could have been designed for people with disabilities, but we all use them. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful feature out there in the world. The development of early computer protocols led to what is now called the internet, is one of those. Dr. Vinton Cerf, who had hearing loss, was married to a woman who was deaf and frequently corresponded with her using text messaging. That eventually became the precursor of the World Wide Web. Technological innovations and modifications, again, originally intended for people with disabilities, but that end up benefiting many more, are often called electronic curb cuts. So for example, Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the telephone, was actually a teacher of deaf students, and his wife was also deaf. But here we are, everyone using some aspect of a telephone, cell phone, landline phone, you name it. What about the Segway? How many of you out there have actually ridden on a Segway? There are Segway tours in Atlanta. The Segway, which is a high-tech scooter, was invented by Dean Kamen. He's also known for a series of disability-related inventions. He was working on a wheelchair capable of climbing stairs and in a standing position. But in that process, he realized that if they used a device that was very similar to that, it could really impact how many people identifying as having a disability or not get around in the community. So again, it's important just to take a look at some of that disability history there and what that means for just our world and universal design, if you will. Next slide, please. So why assistive technology? This is one of my most favorite sayings to talk about out there. For a person without a disability, assistive technology makes life easier. I often say even makes life easier. And so what that means is that, again, those of you out there using smartphones, how many of you have walked up or moved up to an automatic door and it just opened for you and maybe your hands were full, and that was a pretty awesome helpful experience, especially early in the morning when you've got hot coffee in your hand. For a person with a disability, assistive technology makes life absolutely possible. I think about my smartphone. I have a very intimate relationship with Siri, who is actually going off right now because I said her name. There you go. I use my iPhone because it's a small computer. The nature of my disability is progressive muscle weakness. And so I can't tell you how many major projects, grants, reports, PowerPoints I've worked on my iPhone, and it works well for me. I use my voice for controlling my environment, for communication on my phone, works really well for me. There are so many people out in the world, again, who I don't necessarily identify as having a disability that use their iPhone in the same way as well. Automatic doors, again, when I roll up to an automatic door and it opens up, that's true independence for me. That is the environment looking out for me, the world looking out for me. So again, just a way that you can think about technology, making life for people with disabilities possible. We encourage people to use AT. We have yet to meet a successful person who doesn't use any type of assistive technology. And again, as Tori shared earlier, assistive technology is really around us everywhere. Next slide, please. A guiding principle in law, if you look at the bottom corner, this is Public Law 108-364. This is actually written in the Tech Act that supports all of the assistive technology programs across the country. This is beautiful legislation, and I will read this out loud for you right now. It says, disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to live independently, enjoy self-determination and make choices, benefit from an education, to have a job, to be fully included and integrated in all aspects of society, to eat at the restaurant you want to eat at, to go to the movie theater you want to go to. This I love, again, and I love it because of the first few words. Disability is a natural part of the human experience. Again, I talked about earlier about how disability affects us in our life at some point, whether it's ourselves, whether it's people we love, but it's important to pay attention to that. And so to me, this says that we're all born the way that we're born. We bring unique things to the table. If we were all created the same, our lives would be very, very boring. So I appreciate challenges. I appreciate opinions of differences. I appreciate when we can have thoughtful conversations about how we can really move forward progressively and collectively in our society so that everyone feels loved and taken care of and supported, that we're all doing that for each other. Next slide, please. And so I often think about this very important phrase that we often talk about, which says disability is often a consequence of the environment. I don't ever think about my disability until I come up to an obstacle. And that obstacle can be me going out and trying to get into a building, and all of a sudden there's no ramps, there's just steps. Or my husband and I going out for a nice date, and we go to a restaurant and they say, oh my gosh, the front door isn't accessible, but you can come in through the back entrance. Or if I'm in a meeting and somebody hands me a bunch of papers and the agenda or the meeting notes are not in electronic format, that is when I think about my disability. That's when I feel inadequate, or I feel like the world is against me. So again, it's important to think about disability being a consequence of the environment. Again, not someone's fault, not something that needs to be fixed, but moving forward as a factor of the environment, if you will. Next slide. All right, I'm going to give it to Tori to talk and kick it off about disability culture.
Thanks, Liz. So the question is, what is disability culture? Well, disability and culture, it really embodies a very broad definition, because the two words disability and culture are each in themselves value laden and have different connotations. We all actually identify with more than one culture, whether it be disability or it could be a hobby that you're a part of. Like for me, I'm a knitter. I also like to read, so I'm part of two different cultures just right there. But these words, disability and culture, each of them, like I said, are value laden. They have their own connotations, and we're here to help in figuring out what it is and what that combination of those two words mean. So this is just one definition of disability culture. This is from Dr. Stephen Brown, who is the co-founder of the Institute on Disability Culture. And he says, I'm just going to read off the screen. He says, people with disabilities have forged a group identity. We share a common history of oppression and a common bond of resilience. We generate art, music, literature, and other expressions of our lives and our culture infused from our experience of disability. Most importantly, we are proud of ourselves as people with disabilities. We claim our disabilities with pride as part of our identity. We are who we are. We are people with disabilities. This definition right here is very powerful. Like Liz said earlier, when it came to public law to help form the Assistive Technology Act, disability is part of the human experience. So with this definition, it shows that people with disabilities have their own identity, but they still contribute to society and to the world with their own culture and helping to generate art and literature and other kinds of different expressions. We also love when people can have pride in their disability, have pride in their identity, because it's what makes them unique. It's what makes them, one in a million, if you will, or one in a billion, whatever you want to say. Each person is unique, and we want to make sure that with disability, we show just how unique each person is. And so we're going to go into a little bit of what the different models are when it comes to disability culture. There are a couple of different ways to look at it. So first, we're looking at the medical model of disability. And under this model, it shows that impairments or differences need to be, quote, fixed or maybe cured or treated in a medical sense, even when the impairment or difference does not cause any pain or any illness. It says that people with disabilities have to adapt to the world to fit in, instead of the world being adapted for them to fit in. So For example, I know I have some friends who are wheelchair users, and a lot of times with certain treatments, it's like, oh, we're going to fix this. We're going to fix this. But really, they're fine with who they are. They are, they don't need to be fixed. They don't need to be changed by any kind of medical treatment. The impairment or the difference or disability makes them who they are, whether it causes pain or not. So again, with this medical model of disability, we're looking at the emphasis on dependence. So again, with this model, it looks at the disability needs to be fixed. You can't do anything. You have to be dependent on somebody else. The focus again is on the impairment rather than the person. And because of this, a lot of times people are institutionalized because sometimes the basic needs can't be met. And it's in the medical model, it seems to be the norm. Well, again, we want to make sure we're kind of moving away from that. We don't want people to be institutionalized just because they're different. Again, they don't have to be dependent on somebody. They can be independent. So there are some environmental barriers, medical model barriers, and I'm going to toss it over to Liz to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Thank you, Tori. This whole part of the medical model versus the social model is one of my most favorite topics to engage in. So if anybody wants to continue the conversation after, reach out to me. I know that we have a lot to cover. And so I know that there's a lot more that we could talk about, but Tori is right. So when it comes to medical model, there are barriers there, absolutely. And again, the focus is on the environment and the design barriers that make it difficult to have a successful future, whether it's at work, school, leisure, entertainment facilities, again, just in all aspects of society. All the practices and the attitudes are seen as disabling as well. Next slide, please. The social model of disability is where we want to move towards. And so when it comes to defining the social model, you think about it this way. Disability is caused by the way society is organized rather than by the person's impairment or difference. I like this. This is not putting the blame on Liz as the person with a disability. This is putting the responsibility on society as a whole. As I mentioned earlier, no ramps on buildings, attached to buildings, no curb cuts. I can't tell you how many times I've been on strolls with friends and coworkers, and we've gone quite a hike down a sidewalk, and all of a sudden there's no curb cut on the other end. So again, just thinking about the way society is designed and the way it's structured. It views that the position of disabled people and the discrimination against us are socially created and has little to do with our impairments. And it really comes down to restructuring society. Next slide. So with the social model, we explore ways of removing barriers that restrict life choices for disabled people. When these barriers are removed, we as people with disabilities can be independent, equal in society with choice and control over our own lives. Let me emphasize that again, with choice and control over our own lives. I can't tell you again, as somebody with a disability, how many times choices and control has been taken away from me. And so again, when there are ramps, when there are automatic doors, when there are curb cuts, when there are positive attitudes out there, when there's accessibility in mind, when there's universal design in mind, when there's user experience in mind, I have control over my own life. It gives me choices out there. And so here's just actually a cute little image of somebody in their chair. They're really sad because there are stairs there, but look at how their face changes and how they're happy when there's a ramp. Again, because they have a choice and they have control over their own life. And Tori, I think I stole all your slides. Do you want to take over? I apologize.
No, that's fine. I think I may have stolen one or two of yours too, but that's totally okay. So looking at the social model and some solutions, this is one of my favorite slides. The traditional medical model doesn't explain the personal experience of the disability or really help to develop more inclusive ways of living. Again, it focuses on quote unquote fixing the impairment or the disability. when it comes to the social model, it's all about encouraging people with disabilities to redefine what disability means to them. A lot of times people say, well, I'm not disabled. I just see things differently, or I can't hear certain frequencies or whatever. They may not necessarily see themselves as disabled because their definition is different than what others may have. So the social model, again, perpetuates that confidence and self-esteem and really advocating for one's self and one's disability. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Johan.
Great. Thank you, Tori and Liz. They are emphasizing such an important topic here regarding the social and medical model. And as Tori was mentioning earlier, the culture. When I first got into this line of work, I thought it was an easier solution as far as a technological solution or just changing the built environment. And so much of this is a cultural and attitudinal shift. Tori very effectively talked about different cultures. What about a corporate culture? What about a culture of inclusiveness within your agency? So that really is critical. So this is really the sort of like the ground zero of people's motivations and understanding and level of acceptance and knowledge on individuals with disabilities. I can't emphasize how important these aspects are. Unfortunately and inaccurately, people with disabilities are often viewed as victims or objects of pity. And I'll share, Liz shared a bit of her own personal accounts. I'll share some of mine here as well, that this has often occurred for me. I forget that I even have a visual impairment. I'm technically legally blind, but I function quite well visually. Right now, I have a monitor within a couple inches of my face because that's my optimal focal point is very, very close. But I've had people pray for me that my vision is restored. I've had this all my life, and it just is very jarring. It's like that's when I realize that they see me as different or not quote unquote normal, and that I need to be fixed. Like Tori was saying with the medical model, I'm okay. I've adjusted quite well, so I don't need that that pity, horrible or grotesque. So individuals who may not have that level of exposure of seeing ways in which people function that might be outside of their own experience, their quote unquote normal experience that they might consider as normal. Very often individuals with disabilities are labeled as burdens, either on society or on their families and careers. This really is changing. It's slow. We would all like to see this change quicker, but it is starting to change, especially with what Liz and Tori were really emphasizing with the use of assistive technology as well, being providing more of a level playing field. Like Liz says, she hasn't met someone who doesn't, with a disability, who doesn't leverage some level of assistive technology. And we are all on a continuum here. At some point in our lives, we will all likely have some sort of disability. Our vision is going to likely be compromised as we get older. Our sense of touch, our sense of smell, our hearing is going to be compromised. So think of this as a continuum, not a category or boxes to put individuals in. This is this is definitely a continuum. Unable or assumed unable to do things. And I missed the one above here, evil or some threat to the comfort and safety of others. There's still at least one country I know of with individuals with albinism. Albinism is a condition where an individual's pigment is a lighter color. They often have lighter color hair. and usually accompanied with that is lower vision. And there's countries where individuals are actually sought after and um, killed because of that, basically dehumanized. So it's still exists today, the threat and the discomfort that sometimes disabilities can or anything quote unquote different can have on individuals. Having multiple disabilities, assuming a person who uses a wheelchair also has an intellectual disability or hearing loss. I've lost track of how many people when in my previous career working specifically in the area of low vision and blindness rehabilitation saying, oh, that's so cool, I always wanted to learn sign language. It's like, okay, so there's an automatic shift to low vision and blindness and sign language. So there's this is quite common, and it's just it's a learning curve sometimes to learn about people with disabilities and the various ways that people access content and information. So when in doubt, just ask. Don't worry about being politically correct. Don't worry about asking the wrong question. It would be much better to go ahead and just ask the question versus assuming or stepping away from a certain topic because of maybe your own discomfort or someone else's. Very often people with disabilities may be labeled as childlike or quote unquote special. We're going to get into that a little bit more with the special term. Such misconceptions are based on insufficient or inaccurate information about people with disabilities and can perpetuate inappropriate interactions. Next slide. And my own, I'm just not able to read the title, Understanding Attitudinal Barriers. I had to work around my own screen there. People with disabilities face many barriers every day, from physical obstacles in buildings to systemic barriers in employment and civic programs. And once again, it's the attitude. It's easier to tackle the technological aspects. At Georgia Tech, if it was simply a technological hurdle we were looking at, we would already have had it solved. But unfortunately, it's much more than just a technological solution very often. It's an attitudinal solution. And as Tori mentioned with the culture, the culture needs to change in order to be more inclusive and more forward thinking. Often the most difficult barriers to overcome are attitudes other people carry regarding people with disabilities. Whether born from ignorance, fear, misunderstanding, or hate, these attitudes keep people from appreciating and experiencing the full potential a person with a disability can achieve. This is really changing. Even with corporate America, y'all are probably familiar with the typical bell curve of experience. As both Liz and Tori alluded to, people with disabilities and thinking outside of the box, whether it's texting, whether it's the use of a phone, just so many different aspects. Very often that out of the box thinking benefits everyone across the board. Next slide. Defining types of attitudinal barriers. So inferiority, because a person may be impaired in one of life's major functions, some people believe that an individual is a second-class citizen. However, most people with disabilities have skills that make the impairment mute in the workplace. It's interesting. I continually forget that Liz uses a wheelchair. It's not even on my radar. She and I have worked on so many large projects together, and it becomes almost invisible when you start working with an individual and see them as more than just their disability. And I suspect Liz feels the same about me. She knows I'm visually impaired. I do certain make certain accommodations, but we get, at the end of the day, we get the job done. And it's about just doing what you need to do and to incorporate that assistive technology that both Liz and Tori emphasized is so important. Pity, people feel sorry for the person with a disability, which tends to lead to patronizing attitudes. People with disabilities generally don't want pity and charity, just equal opportunity to earn their own way and live independently. I'll give a concrete example. Years ago, a colleague of mine who had a degenerative eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, so with that specific eye condition, a person has tunnel vision where they don't see peripheral vision, and they may bump into poles, door frames, etc. And he would rather have been perceived as drunk, which he would often play off as, than visually impaired, and for people to have pitied him, which was quite striking because that opens up the door for all kinds of other misunderstanding. I'm not suggesting it was a healthy way of approaching it, but I do relate to and understand how distasteful pity can be. That's the last thing that anyone with a disability wants, is pity or charity. Next slide. Hero worship. There is so much damage to this. So people consider someone with a disability who lives independently or pursues a profession to be brave or quote unquote special for overcoming a disability. But most people with disabilities do not want accolades for performing day-to-day tasks. The disability is there. The individual has simply learned to adapt by using his or her skills and knowledge, just as everybody adapts to being tall, short, strong, fast, easygoing, bald, or blonde, for example. The damage that this does, the hero worship, is the person merely needs to exist and, cope through their day-to-day lives just like the rest of us. And for that hero worship to take place, it's setting an unrealistic expectation of that person's accomplishments. And, for example, just doing simple daily tasks is nothing to be necessarily celebrating or worshiping the individual by, because they're so amazing. When that happens to me and people say, wow, you're so amazing what you've accomplished, I've had my challenges. Liz and Tori have had their challenges in different aspects. We all have challenges, but simply getting through the day and doing what we and everybody else needs to do to get by, it doesn't warrant hero worship. It can be demeaning, undermining. On the surface, it may look like it's a compliment, but it's actually undervaluing the individual and the requirements that they have on a day-to-day basis. I'm just going to put a pause on that and let Tori or Liz jump in if you had anything else to add to this specific topic.
Hey, Johan, this is Liz. I always have something to add. You hit the nail on the head when talking about hero worship. And I think what you said is so important, is that people often think that they're saying something nice or that they are complimenting, but you have to really think about where that comes from. Why is the person the focus of that quote unquote compliment that the individual is giving? Why are they being called out, if you will? I can't tell you how many times when I started in my career, I would roll into a meeting room and there were people that would like clap their hands. Liz is here. And it wasn't like, oh, it was my birthday, or, oh my gosh, we haven't seen Liz in 6 years and she's here. It was like, she made it today. And oh my gosh, it's amazing to see her. Again, I'm doing my job. I'm just like everybody else. I've got to make a living. I want to earn that paycheck. I love, what I do. I love helping people. I'm a tax-paying citizen. So again, I think at the heart of our comments and our actions, it's all, kind of what Tori was talking about earlier, that value-laden idea of value-laden language, if you will. And so we have to take a step back and really look at why those words are coming out of our mouth, why those actions are being done, and really what is at the heart of that. So thank you, Johan, for letting me chime in.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Liz, did you have anything to add to that? I'm sorry, Tori.
No worries. Yeah, I think it is one of those things where everyone is just going about their day, going about their lives. I have other friends who are Paralympic athletes, and when someone says, "Oh, you're such an inspiration," for me, if I say that to them, they're inspiring by their discipline in their sport, in their just keeping themselves healthy and active, and that's an inspiration to me. Whereas some people say, "Oh, you're such an inspiration," when they're rolling their grocery cart out to their car. Yeah, it's one of those things where how is that as inspirational or overcoming a disability by just going to the grocery store? Again, I have these friends, they are world-class athletes. They are inspiring to me to get active and do something like that, not be inspired to put groceries in my car by myself. So again, it's the disability is there, as we've said, but the individual is still a person, is still themselves, still going about their day-to-day life.
Great. Thank you, Tori. So types of attitude, no barriers. There's additional types. There's ignorance. People with disabilities are often dismissed as incapable of accomplishing a task without the opportunity to display their skills. In fact, people with quadriplegia can drive cars and have children. People who are blind can tell time on a watch and visit museums. People who are deaf can play baseball and enjoy music. People with developmental disabilities can be creative and maintain strong work ethics. Here's another negative impact here, the spread effect. People assume that an individual's disability negatively affects other senses, abilities, or personality traits, or that the total person is impaired. For example, many people shout at people who are blind or don't expect people using wheelchairs to have the intelligence to speak for themselves. Focusing on the person's abilities rather than his or her disability counters this type of prejudice. It really is about keeping an open mind and not making assumptions, and knowing the person for who they are and what their skill set is. And sometimes that takes time, and sometimes that takes exploration and questions, maybe uncomfortable questions, most likely for the individual asking versus a person with a disability, because a person with a disability has likely experienced this many times. Questions, they would, I don't want to generalize too much, but I would say overall, individuals with disabilities would prefer that you ask those questions than make stereotypes or assumptions about what they can or can't do. Next slide. So stereotypes, the other side of the spread effect is a positive and negative generalizations people form about disabilities. And you notice the word positive is in there as well. For example, many believe that all people who are blind are great musicians or have a keener sense of smell and hearing, that all people who use wheelchairs are docile or compete in Paralympics, that all people with developmental disabilities are innocent and sweet-natured, that all people with disabilities are sad and bitter. Aside from diminishing the individual and his or her abilities, such prejudice can set too high or too low a standard for individuals who are merely human. I'll give you an example of this. I live, a personal example, I live next to a very large park, and I'm a runner, so I'm out in the park a lot. And I don't recognize faces unless they're really close and unless I know the person's color of clothing and body type. But you take me out of context and I get it wrong 9 times out of 10. But I've had several people say just hi and then walk away, and I'll mention that I didn't know that they'll say, hey, I said hi to you in the park. And I would say, I didn't know who said hi to me. There's upwards of 6 million people in the greater Atlanta area. And I've had several people say, well, I thought you would recognize my voice. I'm not a magician that way. I cannot recognize that many voices with the thousands of people I've met and acquaintances and friends. So there's just, it's always better to just simply ask than assume. Next slide. Backlash. Many people believe individuals with disabilities are given unfair advantages, such as easier work requirements. Employers need to hold people with disabilities to the same job standards as coworkers, though the means of accomplishing the tasks may differ from person to person. The Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, does not require special privileges for people with disabilities, just equal opportunities. So once again, it's about doing the task, performing the task, but maybe using the assistive technology tools, maybe changing up the way that task is being done, but the tasks need to be done. And again, individuals with disabilities don't want pity. They don't want the bar to be lowered. They simply want the tasks to be made clear and for the opportunity to explore maybe non-traditional ways in order to perform those tasks. Next slide. Denial. Many disabilities are hidden, such as learning disabilities, psychiatric disabilities, epilepsy, cancer, arthritis, and heart conditions. People tend to believe these are not bona fide disabilities, needing accommodation. The ADA defines quote unquote disability as an impairment that substantially limits one or more of the major life activities. So accommodating hidden disabilities, which meet the above definition, can keep valued employees on the job and open doors for new employees. Fear. Many people are afraid that they will quote unquote do or say something wrong or say the wrong thing around someone with a disability. They therefore avert their own discomfort by avoiding the individual with a disability. As with meeting a person from a different culture, frequent encounters can raise the comfort level. Next slide. And discussion. What attitudinal barriers do you face on a regular basis? For sake of time, it's up to you and Liz and Tori how you want to handle this, but maybe we could take Q&A at the end if that works for you both.
That works for me. I think if there's another question after this as well. So I think if folks maybe want to type in the chat, just their thoughts on it, and we can talk about that a little bit. But I do know that we are moving along on time here. So.
Yep. Okay, and I will pass it along.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Johan. So another discussion question as we, the next section, Tori and I are going to be talking about is moving beyond tolerance. And so this question here that I have for you, and again, just put it in the chat, just some of your thoughts around it if you'd like, but just to get you all thinking, which is better, tolerance or acceptance? And so just be thinking about that, tolerance or acceptance, which is better? And we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So when it comes to moving beyond tolerance, it's important to know that tolerance of differences is an important first step, but we need to go beyond it to a stage where differences are appreciated and valued. And again, I'll repeat that, where differences are appreciated and valued. Diversity may be addressed at a surface level, but the organization, and when we say the organization, this is probably going to pop up a couple times, we're talking about like a larger entity. So just kind of think of it that way. But that could be society, community, what have you. But the organization is not committed to the idea that diversity has advantages. Next slide, please. So challenge one, this is changed power dynamics. With the infusion of new diverse individuals who may not fit the traditional organizational mold, traditional constituents may feel an erosion of power. As power is redistributed, doubts may emerge within the traditional constituencies about how they will fit into the new organization. And so I do love this one because I often feel like I'm an individual who doesn't fit into the traditional organizational mold, if you will, but we need to change that. So everybody fits into that traditional organizational mold, but we are talking about diverse hiring practices for folks with disabilities. We've got HR, we've got headhunters, we've got recruiters going out to the places where people with disabilities are, centers for independent living, other organizations out there to target folks with disabilities, to tell them, hey, we want to hire. We want to hire at fair wages and fair practices. And so when that brings new ideas in, new folks in, oftentimes people with disabilities are highlighted for thinking outside the box. It really can kind of shake things up, if you will. But I think that's important. I think we often need to be shaken up at times. So something to think about with the changed power dynamics. Next slide, please. Challenge 2, diversity of opinions. I love this. As the face of an organization's workforce changes, the number and range of perspectives increase exponentially, and leaders have to synthesize a diversity of opinions from individuals' unique values, cultural grounding, and the resulting accepting behaviors. So again, we've talked about the whole idea of folks with disabilities and the ideas that folks with disabilities bring to the table and how we don't want people to all be the same. We want to value the diversity of opinions, if you will. And so again, that's really what this is talking about. It's important to know that two people can view the same event with very different interpretations and formulate opinions about those perceptions and interpretations. We all have to see the strength in our diversity. Not having diversity is boring. It won't help to move an organization forward. It won't help to move policies and procedures forward. That's something that is so important. So again, I encourage everyone to see the strength and diversity and be able to seek out different individuals to get those different opinions. Next slide. Challenge 3, perceived lack of empathy. The challenge of integrating diverse viewpoints and opinions is integrally linked with the third challenge, which is overcoming a perceived lack of empathy. And really this goes to being able to have the ability to establish an emotional identification with followers from a variety of cultures. And so this next line just says that how there are distinguished leaders in our history, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, John F. Kennedy, Mahatma Gandhi. They really were passionate and compassionate individuals. They recognized the needs of their followers and they incorporated those into their convictions. I appreciate it when surveys are going out around Georgia Tech, around our Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation that ask us often, what do you think about what's happening on campus? What do you think about what's happening in the center? What can we do better? They're looking at everyone's opinions, but they're also very compassionate, and they are looking at the diversity of opinions. So again, when we have that emotional identification with our followers, we can often overcome that stigmatization and those attitudinal barriers as well. Next slide. Challenge 4, tokenism. This is a big one out there. A traditional barrier faced in the early stages of a more diverse workforce is that of real or perceived tokenism. Real tokenism occurs when an employee can be hired over other more qualified candidates in an effort to address stakeholder concerns or simply to fulfill numbers. Outside of just that quota fulfillment, if you will, oftentimes people with disabilities are targeted as tokens. I often, for a while, was the one being asked to pose in photos, right? To be the image of certain kind of materials that we were putting out there, myself and a few other folks at CIDI. That happened in other workforces or workplaces as well. It's nothing, I know that people are just trying to get that diverse look out there, if you will. But again, we have to think about what that really means and what that real tokenism means, whether it is received as real or perceived, if you will. Next slide. Challenge 5, participation. In a diverse work setting, employee participation is critical in the organizational process. It's necessary to enable the organization to capitalize on new, different, and creative ways of thinking. So again, we just want to think about that diversity of opinion and how important it is for those diverse opinions to have the opportunity to participate. Participation can ease the tension resulting from the issue of power sharing and change power dynamics, the expression and gathering of different perspectives and opinions, the building of perceptions of empathy, and the reduction of real or perceived tokenism. So that participation goes back to all of these other challenges that I just mentioned as well. Next slide. All right, Tori, you're up to talk about the 8 stages of response.
All right, thank you, Liz. So there are 8 stages of response toward acceptance. And it's really interesting when you read through these because it truly is kind of a step-by-step transition. So first, it's all about actively participating in the oppression. Sometimes we don't realize we are, and then that can lead over into denying or ignoring that participation. But then sometimes people will then go into recognizing that active participation in oppression, but they're not going to take any action. From there, you can then begin to educate yourself. And then after that, recognizing and interrupting when you see the oppression happening. The next step is interrupting and then educating. So it's all about recognizing, interrupting, and then educating. And then you can go into supporting and encouraging, and then finally initiating and preventing that oppression to even begin. Because that's what, again, that's kind of what we want. We want to make sure that no oppression ever starts. But it's all about these little baby steps, if you will, starting with actively participating in the oppression and then going into preventing it as a whole. So, so we're going to kind of break down this a little bit more. So again, actively participating, this is where you have these actions of offensive language, laughing, or telling jokes about people that put them down, especially those with disabilities. And then the next step would be denying or ignoring the oppression. So this is where you support, it's the oppression coupled with an unwillingness or even an inability to understand the passive acceptance of these actions by others that then serves to support the system of oppression. Again, by just denying that the oppression is happening or ignoring it, actually supports the oppression, which is definitely not something that we want. From there, we can recognize that the oppression is happening, but we're not going to take any action. And again, this can be very harmful. Even though the recognition doesn't result in any action to interrupt the situation, again, there is still some harm that can take place. Then we start to move into a more positive side. So then we're going to start educating ourselves, taking action to learn more about disabilities and disability rights. This can include a webinar kind of like this. It can include reading books, watching movies, talking with others, learning about artists who have disabilities or other figures of state, if you will, that may have had disabilities. All sorts of things, just so you can increase your awareness and your knowledge about people with disabilities. This is a kind of a middle ground, if you will, and a prerequisite for the last 3 stages of this little continuum. And all 3 of the next stages involve interactions with people with disabilities. In order to do this confidently and comfortably, you need to learn more first. You've got to learn and educate yourself before you can do the next 3 steps. And that would be recognizing and interrupting. So recognizing not only the disability related oppression actions, but also taking steps to stop them. So the response may not go very far, but this is a very often an important transition from passively accepting oppression to actively choosing acceptance actions. And then from there, you can move into interrupting and educating. So this is where an attempt to begin educating others about disability related oppression, is very important. It goes beyond interrupting those actions of oppression to engage people in dialogue about these issues. With questions and dialogue, the response attempts to help others increase their awareness or knowledge about people with disabilities, as well as disability rights as a whole. And then we go into the last two steps, which are supporting and encouraging. This is where, again, you're taking those actions to support, appreciate, celebrate people with disabilities, not just standing by, actually being engaged. And then the final is initiating and preventing. And this is, again, we kind of come full circle. This is the stage of the response that includes actions that actively anticipate and identify disability-related institutional practices or individual actions, and you are striving to work to change them. And really, this kind of goes back to the difference between a medical model of disability and a social model. You know, by initiating and preventing, we can try to get away from that medical model of disability and go towards the social model of disability and work to change the world to adapt instead of having people with disabilities adapt to the world.
Great job, Tori. I've got 3 points and then we're going to wrap it up. So I encourage all of you that have any questions or comments to start putting them in the chat so Johan, Tori, and I can address them as well. It really comes down to making the connection. If employers believed adults with disabilities have or could learn valuable job skills, then we wouldn't have the estimated 70% unemployment rate among people with disabilities. If merchants saw people with disabilities as customers with money to spend, we wouldn't have so many inaccessible stores, theaters, restrooms, and other establishments out there. And if the service system identified people with disabilities as customers instead of clients or consumers or recipients, perhaps it would begin to meet a person's real needs, like inclusion, friendships, instead of trying to remediate problems, quote unquote problems. Next slide, please. And when you make that connection, when other people see you as valued, it changes your self-perception. So if individuals with disabilities and family members saw themselves as first-class citizens who can and should be fully included in all areas of society, we might focus on what's really important: living in a real life, in the real world, enjoying ordinary opportunities and experiences, and dreaming big dreams like people without disabilities, instead of living a special life in the disability world where low expectations, isolation, segregation, poverty, and hopelessness are considered the norm. And next slide. And so with that, I'll wrap up on this wonderful quote from William James. And he says, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind." And I couldn't wrap this up any better way than saying that when you really can flip that switch on your thoughts about segregation, people with disabilities, value-laden language, you really can change so much. Generations, future generations, just make it better in a collective society for folks with and without disabilities. So there we are. We're here at the Q&A, and I'll give it to Johan now.
We are spot on at 3:15. Well done, Tori and Liz. I know our captionist is scheduled till 3:15, so Idella, thank you so much. If anybody, and this isn't a one-off, keep in mind that the three of us are going to be presenting again, and then there's multiple trainings thereafter as well. But if anyone has questions you want to ask, your mics are all available to be enabled. I went through and it's a smaller group today, so if you prefer to type in the chat or just open up your mic, feel free at this point if you'd like. And I see some comments. I believe this was Taylor Williams' response to the question that was posed. I believe acceptance is better because it is more permanent, but I think that will take more attitudinal shifts. Sorry, I'm losing track of my attitudinal shifts and more time, which I don't think people are willing to do. Tolerance is a little quicker and gives people an excuse to not actually think about what they are doing and saying when it comes to people with disabilities. thank you for that comment. And then I'm sorry, I'm probably not the best person to read the chat because I have it enlarged. But another person who I can't see the name is cut off. It says, well done, Tori. And then Katie Howard says, will we receive a copy of the recording of this webinar? You certainly will. I'm going to share this with Christy. You'll be receiving the recording as an MP4 video. You'll be receiving the PowerPoint as an accessible PDF. And then we're also going to be providing the full transcript for individuals as well. That's not only helpful for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, but if there's a certain aspect of this presentation you want to quickly do a search on, it'll be a Word document, and you can, in a matter of a couple of keystrokes, find specific topics or a specific comment. So thank you, Liz and Tori. Great job. And once again, I thoroughly enjoyed co-presenting with you all. And with that, unless there are any other questions, I think I saw a clapping of hands floating up to heaven. That's what it looked like to me, a new feature in Zoom, I guess. Any other comments or questions from the attendees?
Johan, there was a question that Alicia posted for me, and I'll take 10 seconds and answer
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Alicia said, Liz mentioned the difficulty of being handed a stack of papers in a meeting. Can she elaborate? I didn't understand. I appreciate you asking that, Alicia. Basically, I have because of the nature of my disability, which is progressive muscle weakness over time, I have a print-related disability that is not a cognitive disability or a learning disability. What that is that I'm physically unable to handle books. If you give me or papers. So if you give me a stack of papers or a book, in college, I had a really difficult time with massive books because it was difficult for me to flip through the pages and open the book up. So again, in a meeting, if I'm given a stack of papers, it's just difficult for me to manage those papers. And so I usually have to rely on a coworker, next to me. But again, if that was thought about collectively as an accessible option and emailed to me in advance, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal, and it wouldn't be, troubling, if you will. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great. Thank you, Liz, for catching that. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And thank you for everyone attending on a Friday afternoon, a Good Friday before Easter long weekend. Much appreciated. Tori and Liz, any final comments before we close it out here?
No, I don't have anything. Just want to say thank you again for this opportunity. And we look forward to giving more webinars and presentations in this series.
Fantastic. Thank you all. It was a pleasure co-presenting with you. Top notch as always. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close it out, and y'all have a wonderful weekend.